Listen up, Rangers! Welcome to the Geek Chest. My name's Steve, and today I got a little bit of a different review for you guys, because today we're going over the comic book Godzilla in Hell. And you guys might be wondering about the little bit of a different setup that I got going on here. I'm actually in my spare bedroom where I do a lot of the filming for super unimportant reviews, because all my other stuff, mainly that I do for the Geek Chest, is actually in my game room, but I didn't really feel like moving everything around, so we're just gonna do this from here, and it seemed a little bit more fitting to do this in here anyways, cause Godzilla. This is the first issue that IDW put out of this series, which I primarily got this because it just sounded cool. Like, I seen a few images of this on Facebook, and I just heard the title, and literally it was just like, I need to order this right now. Cause none of my comic book shops, or any place around here, actually sells IDW comics. Like, heck, I can't even find, like, Marvel comics around here. Like, that's how bad it is around here. Primarily why I don't actually buy a whole lot of comics. Like, most of mine are actually just the old Godzilla comics. I have a few other giant monster kind of related comic books. And a lot of versus stuff like Alien vs. Predator and like Alien vs. Predator vs. Judge Dredd and stuff like that. I got a lot of really obscure comic books and a few other Transformer ones here and there. So for this comic book, pretty much the story of it is there's not a whole lot of story. It's pretty much like it sounds. Godzilla goes to hell. They don't really explain why he's going to hell. But he crash lands into hell and has to get through what I understand to be the first level of hell. Which, the story is actually pretty neat, because, like, when have you ever seen Godzilla go to hell? Like, this this is literally the most original thing I've seen from these Godzilla comics, because a lot of the ones I primarily have are, again, the Dark Horse comics, which are pretty standard Godzilla comics. Like, in terms of story and stuff, like, I could believe these things actually becoming movies. While this, outside of a comic book, that's about it. It's pretty much like the Godzilla creepypasta, just bundled up into one nice little package. But to me, what actually makes this comic book really neat is that there's actually no human interaction with Godzilla throughout the entire comic, and I imagine with the entire series, because he's in hell. So there's literally like no dialogue going on in this entire comic book, which is actually really cool. Because, like, especially with the older comics, pretty much any other Godzilla comic, you need that kind of human element to kind of help move the story along and kind of give people a purpose in order with Godzilla to be around too, kind of give him a purpose as well. While in this, you're just pretty much in it to find out how Godzilla is going to escape from hell, or even why he's there to begin with. And it's really cool to see his, like, interactions with hell, because pretty much the comic book, the best way to sum up is it's kind of put it into 4 sections for the first one, where, like, he gets into hell, and then what happens while he's in hell. And it's just really cool to see how he addresses the situations that are brought to him. Because you imagine he's never really been put in these kind of specific situations, because a lot of the stuff to him kind of seems familiar, and then just things go horribly awry. Like, if you guys ever seen John Carpenter's The Thing, it's kind of like that, where the situation is, you come up to it like you come up to the humans in that movie, treat them like they're normal humans, and then bad things happen. And for the comic book, actually the art style is really cool as well. I'll show you guys the first page, because you can find a lot of this image on like sampler sites and stuff, so I don't really feel too bad showing it to you guys. But the art style is actually really neat. Like, overall, it actually kind of feels a little bit cartoony, while also having this like eerie, scary, gross kind of vibe to it, which is really different for a Godzilla comic, especially the way Godzilla's drawn, because he's more like standard looking, kind of cartoonish in a way, while some of the stuff he comes into contact with are not so much. Which is really cool, because it helps to differentiate a little bit of style inside the comic book, because you get him, you're very comfortable, very familiar with him, and then you're not familiar with anything else that's going on, which is the way hell should be. My only real problem with this comic book is that for the entirety of the comic book, again, there's no human interaction, no narration, so it's literally just Godzilla kind of stomping through hell. But with the comic book, because of that, there's not really a whole lot to go off of other than the pictures that you see inside the comic. And also with that, you don't really get what I'm going to call the noise of the comic book, where you get a lot of the sound effects, like when stuff's happening, like crash, boom, when he's fighting things. You figure you'd hear like stuff like rumbling, him doing a screonk, or even like the sound of the atomic blast when he does it. You don't really get that in this. Like, there's a little bit of like the hiss when he's activating his dorsal fins for when he's going to be doing his atomic blast. But for the most part, yeah, that's all you're really getting. Like, there's a few other things like spread out here and there, but not too much, which kind of makes it more like a picture book then, because granted, it does tell a story with each of the panels. It has a really nice flow to it, but you kind of lose a little bit of like that interactivity with it, where you pretty much just look at the picture, move on to the next picture, move on to the next picture. But with the sound effects, you're kind of popping around on the page, and it kind of helps to bring the fights and situations a little bit more to life. So it helps to keep you engaged in the comic book a little bit more, while this, you kind of breeze through it pretty quick. Like, overall, I kind of read this for, I would say, probably around 10 minutes, and then that's pretty much all I got out of it so far. Like, I looked over through it multiple times, because it's really cool, really pretty to look at. But it doesn't take too long to get through this. One comic I actually want to point out that did this prior is the Dark Horse comic, Godzilla vs. the Terror from Space. Which, in this comic book, since it's a little bit of an older one, so I don't really mind spoiling it for you guys. But, essentially, Godzilla's sleeping on the bottom of the ocean. A tremor kind of happens when he's underneath, which you find out he's actually in like a little dream sequence. But he ends up in the prehistoric age, and he ends up fighting this monster from space that kind of looks like a giant red dragon. And then the meteor comes down to blow up the dinosaurs. But Godzilla there. Godzilla wakes up, has a piece of the monster he's fighting in his hand. Dun dun dun. But throughout this entire thing, again, no human interaction. But what they did that was slightly different than this is, again, they had the noise with the fight scenes and whatnot, where it actually gives a little more gravitas. And also, they actually had some narration to kind of help explain what's happening a little bit. Which, I don't really feel like that's necessary. But with the sound effects and that, it kind of helps to keep your attention throughout the comic book a little bit longer, to make it a little bit longer of a read. While again, this one doesn't take too long to breeze through. But in the end, I would actually recommend you guys picking up this comic, because I actually personally think it's still really, really neat. Like, I make it sound a little bit worse because of the whole lack of noise thing, which it doesn't really bother me all that much. It was just something I was kind of just breezing through this scene, just kind of noticed. I was like, wow, there's just a lot of pretty pictures. But it's still really cool, visually striking, really interesting. And I'm actually really excited to pick up the next ones, because I imagine they're going to probably go through a lot more of hell, and hopefully they kind of change up the visual style throughout it. That would be really cool. And I also know they're going to be introducing more of the monsters in it, because I think in the next one you get Varan, Rodan, and Anguirus, which would be really cool. So if you guys want a different Godzilla story and something that looks awesome and will display it awesome on your shelf, then look no further than Godzilla in Hell. But what do you guys think? Have you guys read Godzilla in Hell? Have you guys read any of the other IDW comics, or is movies just more your thing? Please let us know in the comments. Help us defeat those kaijus by hitting that like button. Subscribe to become a Ranger today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.